The right is calling for revenge in the form of firing every leftist who talked out of line over Charlie Kirk's assassination. Just as it did with the left, this mentality threatens to tear the country apart. Already there are firefighters, publicists, teachers, and a whole host of others who have lost or are in the process of losing their primary occupations. Elon Musk has gone on record as saying the left is the party of murder and celebrating murder, even though all the prominent Democrats in Washington explicitly condemned the assassination. And the reality is that most of the people being fired didn't even celebrate Kirk's death. A Florida Panthers publicist was suspended for a comment about gun control. "Why are y'all sad? Your man said it was worth it," he said. The comment was insensitive, yes, but it was a comment about a past statement by Kirk on gun control, a statement I agree with in part. It was not a celebration of the murder by any stretch of the imagination. Even those who actually cheered the death of Charlie Kirk engaged in what was, by definition, a truly victimless sin, and it certainly wasn't a crime. Nobody got hurt after someone said, as a firefighter from New Orleans did, that the bullet which killed Kirk was a gift from God. To some, it's a horrible sentiment, but nobody was hurt by this kind of speech. Kirk is already dead, and he can't be hurt anymore. People saying right things online to troll or vent all the time, sometimes implying or saying things outright that they don't believe. Everybody knows that most people are not the same in person as the personality they create online. Yet there's a highly judgmental sentiment on both sides of the political duopoly that the livelihoods of absolutely powerless people need to be destroyed for this kind of verbal faux pas, even though they've never met them and know next to nothing about them. And the targets are by definition powerless people, not just because they are only employees, but typically because they are mostly on the lowest end of the supervisory scale. I don't want to work with someone who had such a moral lapse in judgment that they would praise murder, the chorus of Republicans who cheer on Trump's drone strikes reply. In the end, this social phenomenon is a form of punch-down online bullying. What's a proportionate punishment for the sin of praising Kirk's murder that caused no tangible harm? Jesus called for forgiving a brother 70 times 7 times. And the Old Testament calls for eye for eye. Is it really proportional to say that these people who objectively harmed no one should lose their livelihoods, that they should lose their homes, that their children should go hungry because of some speech that in a better age would not have been recorded and dismissed as blowing off steam? The question is rhetorical. We all know it's not proportional. We all know deep down that this fire them sentiment comes from a mean spot of vengeance that shouldn't be nourished. Some reactions on my social media to a comment by me calling for cooler heads were as unhinged as the comments by the people losing their jobs right now, and perhaps worse. If the same standard is applied to their comments as they seek to apply to those whose jobs they are trying to destroy, they would find themselves unemployed. Yes, during the COVID pandemic, thousands upon thousands of hardworking Americans were stripped of their jobs for refusing to comply with the unscientifically proven and authoritarian demands by the left to comply with policies such as mandatory masks. I stood against them then as I stand against the right now. Two wrongs or something along those lines. While the praise for Kirk's murder online was mostly reactionary and thoughtless, the calls for firing the mostly powerless people who said or posted about Kirk is different in one sense. Their kind of punch-down bullying is thought out and thoroughly deliberate. Therefore, in that one sense, the right-wing idiots calling for their pound of leftist flesh are worse than the leftists who posted that online in the first place. Of course, in the Old Testament, the eye for an eye prescription was meant to replace the disproportionate head for an eye of vengeance. The same vengeance now called for among all the moralizing hypocrites on the political right. There needs to be social guardrails installed against this kind of social media mob vengeance. We saw it with the left on COVID, and now we see the right doing the same thing. I'd argue that nobody should lose their job over social media comments, except direct threats, though anyone is free to vote against a politician who expresses such an opinion at the next election. The impact of these firings cannot be positive. What do you think will happen to the people thus made unemployed? Do you think they will learn their lesson and suddenly become sinless, perfect people? Or will they harden their views and bear ever greater grudges? Will they next seek to get people on the right fired as revenge with social media creating even more economic chaos as the powers that be tighten the noose around rational political discourse? This is a generational bug that will probably resolve itself with reason and a thicker skin on speech. America will either consume itself in a perpetual Hatfields and McCoys feud where the opposing teams bite each other to death and free expression is gobbled up in the frenzy, or more likely look back on this time with one of those "how could those primitive people think the way they did" vibes. Some free marketeers are falling back on the cop-out that it's a private company. They can fire anyone they want. Even as all the government officials from the president on down call out for the speech offenders be purged from the ability to provide for their families. This is not the free market in action. None of this is organic. None of it. All of it is socially engineered, every bit as much as the social media companies are giant government contractors. Anyone seeking liberty should see this for what it is. A screen test of the 2 minutes of Orwellian hate that will be used against people seeking liberty at the first opportunity. If you would call for the firing of someone who spoke out of line on the Charlie Kirk Kirk assassination, you're not calling for using the enemy's weapon against them. You're calling for taking our main weapon and First Amendment right, free speech, away from the liberty movement. Think at least one step ahead, people. Even if you can't pretend you are immune because you're as pure as the driven snow and can't see the shit in your own toilet, no doubt you can see the speck in the eyes of your loved ones. The real enemies of freedom run the NSA, CIA, and the surveillance state. They own the most powerful corporations in the world. They control the politicians and lobby against any policies that actually benefit us. They are the largest portfolio holders in the stock market and will do anything they can, such as starting a civil war, to avoid being held accountable by the public who vastly outnumber them. Do you really want to make it so that your loved ones can lose their means of self-support, their homes, and have their children go hungry when the worst moment of judgment on their worst day is brought out in public? If you do, good luck with that strategy, because that strategy will never win. I'm sticking with letting everyone express their emotions freely, something that results in far less violence down the road. The same thing Jesus, for those of you who are religious, once preached. That instruction at least has a long history of success.